Eunuch Gao, the student has learned courtesy. Wang Chong quickly turned his head and gave the eunuch a deep bow. The scions of the capital had many unspoken criticisms of these castrated eunuchs, but Wang Chong was different. In front of his eyes was nothing more than a virtuous official. Whether he was a eunuch or not, someone who could be loyal to the country, loyal to the sovereign, loyal to the world, was a person worthy of respect. Moreover, when Wang Chong was in prison, Eunuch Gao had treated him kindly. Haha! When we last met in your cell, I knew that young master was an extraordinary individual. From a tiny cell to today's meeting, all was as expected. In the War of the Southwest, young master achieved enormous merit. You truly have not disappointed His Majesty. Eunuch Gao raised the decree as he smiled. Unlike the other eunuchs, Eunuch Gao had never referred to himself as this one or this lowly one, but had always simply used I. This was a great honor within the palace, and from this aspect alone, one could see how greatly the Son of Heaven favored him. Eunuch Gao's praise is too much. When the world is in danger, every person has their duty to save it. Wang Chong only did his duty. Wang Chong gave a small bow. Oh! Eunuch Gao's eyes brightened as he looked at Wang Chong in surprise. When the world is in danger, every person has their duty to save it. Interesting. Young master's thoughts truly are different from ordinary people, truly deserving of His Majesty's great kindness. In the world that Wang Chong had come from, when the world is in danger, every person has their duty to save it, was a phrase that every person was familiar with. But in this world, it was clear that no one had heard of it before. It was clear that this was the case for Eunuch Gao as well. Wang Chong, receive the decree. Eunuch Gao nodded and immediately unfurled the second divine decree. Wang Chong receives the decree. Eunuch Gao's voice began to boom over the imperial stairway, resounding through the entire palace and beyond. In an instant, everyone, whether it was the guards, maids, or even the people in the distant Yuzhan Palace, perked up their ears and began to carefully listen. The War of the Southwest was an extremely important war, one that was related to the fate of the entire Great Tang. Many people were very curious to see what sort of reward Wang Chong would be granted, but no one would be able to know until the decree was promulgated. King Qi, Abusi, Duan Qian, and many more officials, including Wang Zhen, all showed signs of focus. Wang Chong was no exception. Although he had already experienced mountains of corpses and seas of blood, which had tempered his mind to an extremely formidable level, this reward ceremony was extremely important to him. But not even he knew what the sage emperor would reward him with. All of this had already broken away from the course of history. At least in his last life, such a thing had never happened before. Acceding to the will of the heavens, the emperor declares, in the War of the Southwest, Wang Chong of the Wang lineage pacified Mengshi Zhao and Yu Sang to the benefit of his country. He is rewarded with 3 million taels of gold, 30,000 bushels of pearls, 400,000 rolls of silk, and the rank of Marquis with the title the Young Marquis. Boom! The words Young Marquis were like a boulder being dropped into a lake. The entire palace was in an uproar, the observation platforms abuzz with chatter. A Marquis. The sage emperor made him a Marquis. He's only 17. For him to be made a Marquis is unprecedented. In all the 300 years of the Great Tang, no one this young has ever been made an imperial Marquis. I've been in charge of the Bureau of Rights for so many years and am very familiar with all the ancient texts of the imperial court. Never since ancient times has there been a title like Young Marquis. His Majesty created this title specifically for him. Doesn't that mean that of all the countless youths in the world, only he alone can be called Marquis? How great of a regard is this? The young Marquis, putting aside all the gold and pearls, His Majesty actually made him a Marquis. This sort of thing has never happened. Doesn't this mean that his rank now exceeds many of the first-rank officials of the court? The observation platforms were in an uproar, everyone showing shock on their faces. Many people had speculated that the sage emperor would richly reward Wang Chong upon his return from the southwest. But Wang Chong had no rank, and didn't even have his name written down in the registers of the Great Tang Army. This was an inherent problem, so many people believed that no matter how richly the emperor would reward Wang Chong, he would at most confer upon him the title of count. No one had expected the sage emperor to go this far. Despite the fact that Wang Chong had no position within the empire and was essentially no different from a common citizen, he had been raised straight to the rank of marquis. Such was his status that he now outranked many important officials of the court. Even his big uncle Wang Zhen was now suppressed by Wang Chong's brilliance. Ha ha ha, a marquis. My Wang clan actually produced such an excellent youth. Wang Zhen stroked his sparse beard, his eyes shining brightly as his robe trembled in excitement and relief. For the Wang lineage to have a 17-year-old marquis in his lifetime was simply unthinkable. Across all the clans of the capital, not a single clan had ever had such a young marquis. The Wang clan stood alone. Chonger, good job. Big uncle didn't make the wrong call. With you here, our Wang clan is certain to have an even more dazzling future. Wang Zhen's heart was thumping in excitement. Bastard! The young marquis. This wet-behind-the-ears brat was actually made a marquis by His Majesty. The Great Tang has never had such a young marquis before. This is simply unreasonable. Unlike Wang Zhen, King Qi had an ashen complexion paired with a nasty grimace. Not only had Wang Chong dodged his scheme, the sage emperor had also created the title of young marquis specifically for him. King Qi had never expected this. One Wang clan together with King Song was already hard enough to deal with. Now that Wang Chong had become the young marquis, wouldn't the task be even more difficult? King Qi felt like there was a dagger pushed against his back. Damn it! King Qi's knuckles cracked as he clenched his fists. He had a mind to leave with a sweep of his sleeve, but all the officials were assembled to watch the sage emperor give out rewards for the victory in the southwest. Not even the boldest person would dare to mess around at this time and disrupt the ceremony in front of the sage emperor. But when everyone believed that this was the extent of the sage emperor's rewards, they learned that it was far from over. In addition, Wang Chong is wise despite his youth. In commendation for his feats in the southwest and so that he might serve as a model for the world, an exception will be made and he will be granted a fief. The specific area in question to be conferred will be decided through discussions with the Bureau of Rights and the Bureau of Revenue after the ceremony. Boom! Another boulder set out countless waves. Wang Chong's being made a marquis was surprising enough, shocking everyone. But now, Wang Chong had been graced with a fief, delivering an unprecedented blow to everyone present. A fief! His Majesty is granting him a fief. Not since Emperor Taizong has anyone been granted a fief. This is a true marquis. Just how virtuous or capable is this boy that he is able to obtain such an honor? This completely contravenes the rules of our ancestors. An old censor finally couldn't suppress his shouts. He could accept the sage emperor's making Wang Chong a marquis, but to even give him a fief, even the smallest territory, was unacceptable. Ridiculous! King Qi's face was twitching, contorted in a nasty expression. He could no longer hold himself back. A 17-year-old boy, immature and inexperienced, with no title or rank. I can accept him being made a marquis, but for him to be also given a fief is absolutely absurd. Swish! King Qi could no longer watch. With a sweep of his dragon robe, he suddenly turned around and rudely made his exit before the crowd. This ceremony was no minor affair, and not even King Qi would dare to disrupt it. But right now, King Qi had already reached his breaking point. He had only come today to be humiliated. The title of marquis and the reward of territory were like two vicious slaps across his face. He felt like everyone around him was laughing at him. Even that old scoundrel Wang Zhen was laughing at him, let alone Wang Chong at the top of the imperial stairway. King Qi did not have the personality capable of enduring all this. Your Highness! Yao Guangyi was stunned. He had taken his father's advice and done his utmost to remain inconspicuous today. Given the Yao clan's customary demeanor, this wasn't really much of a feat. There was truly very little that the Yao clan could not accept. But he hadn't expected King Qi to just suddenly leave. Wang Chong wasn't the only person attending this ceremony. This wasn't merely a question of not giving Wang Chong face. If King Qi left so willfully, it would be an utter disaster. Quickly stop His Highness. Yao Guangyi wanted to stop King Qi, but it was too late. King Qi was much stronger than he was, and he was always proud and arrogant. If he wanted to do something, who could stop him? Your Highness King Qi, where do you plan on going? A laughing voice like that of the Maitreya Buddha came from the top of the imperial stairway. Eunuch Gao had spoken. Stubborn eunuch! Leave me! King Qi cursed as he walked, not even turning his head. He was an imperial clansman, so if he wanted to leave, no one could stop him. But suddenly, without the smallest warning, a terrifying energy that could make the world dim suddenly burst out from beneath King Qi's feet. King Qi was himself an extremely formidable expert, but this stream of energy was even more powerful. Ah! With a shout, King Qi was instantly sent flying by this powerful energy. Buzz! All was quiet, everyone trembling in fear. Even Wang Chong shot a stunned glance at Eunuch Gao. What a powerful expert! Wang Chong blinked in surprise. He knew just how powerful an expert King Qi was. Unlike other imperial princes, King Qi had been obsessed with martial arts as a child and could be described essentially as a martial arts maniac. Thus, in martial arts, he was much stronger than King Song. Even though Wang Chong had reached the imperial martial realm, he was still no match for him. But Eunuch Gao had sent King Qi flying while barely seeming to move. Wang Chong was now much stronger and was also very close, yet he had still somehow failed to notice when Eunuch Gao had struck. Such cultivation was simply beyond belief. In my last life there was an appraisal. Although King Qi was born as an imperial prince, as a relative of the emperor, he still wasn't lacking for any techniques or pills, greatly smoothing his path of cultivation. Thus, although he never leaves his home, King Qi's cultivation has already surpassed the vast majority of cultivators, placing him amongst the elite. He might even be a little stronger than fierce generals like Geshu Han and Fuming Lingcha. For Gao Lishur to be able to send him flying is simply inconceivable. Wang Chong's mind was in turmoil. In a flash, that amiable and plump eunuch director of the inner court seemed to grow several times larger and infinitely more unfathomable. But even more shocking was the fact that Eunuch Gao had dared to strike King Qi. This was the most surprising thing of all. Crazy, he's gone crazy. All the people on the observation platforms couldn't believe their eyes. King Qi had always been hard to restrain. None of the nobles or officials dared to strike him. Even a prestigious clan like the Wang clan had some apprehensions about King Qi. No one could have ever even dared to think about attacking King Qi. But Gao Lishur had sent him flying without a second thought. Feng Yuanyi, you dare! King Qi bellowed out from the base of the imperial stairway, his roars shaking the heavens. As he got up off the ground, a killing energy began to explode from his body, and his bestial eyes viciously glared at Gao Lishur. Damned slave! Nothing more than a slave for the house of heaven. Not even a man, and yet you dare attack me. You deserve 10,000 deaths. King Qi's eyes flashed with vicious light. If looks could kill, Gao Lishur would have experienced death thousands of times already. Your Highness King Qi, the ceremony has not concluded. Where are you intending on going? Eunuch Gao stood high up on the imperial stairway, looking down at King Qi. His complexion was ruddy, his face beaming. He was amiable as ever. Not even King Qi yelling out his old name was able to stir any anger on his face. It felt impossible to determine what he was truly thinking. You slave that doesn't know the heights of the heavens or the thickness of the earth. I'll kill you. King Qi's killing intent was inflamed. Roar! The moment he spoke, a golden light exploded and the air resounded with the roars of dragons. A majestic storm of energy had arisen from King Qi's body. Space began to twist as a massive golden dragon manifested over his head, bellowing as it emerged from the void. And its target was the distant Gao Lishur at the top of the imperial stairway. Who cares if you're Gao Lishur? Who cares if you're the director of the inner court? Angering me will result in your death all the same. I don't believe that those fellows would dare to do anything to me, the mighty King Qi, a member of the imperial clan. Your Highness, you can't. Yao Guangyi had completely lost control of himself. Who was Gao Lishir? He truly was a eunuch of a lowly status who could not even compare to an imperial clansman like King Qi. But this was only true for ordinary eunuchs, and who except King Qi, in the inner court of the imperial palace, no, the entire capital, would dare to treat Gao Lishir like an ordinary eunuch? He had served for decades at the sage emperor's side. They had experienced the war of the princes together and all the tribulations that came from ascending to the throne. Given his achievements, could his status in the palace really be described with an ordinary word like eunuch? Buzz. Just when everyone was about to witness King Qi and eunuch Gao clash in the imperial palace, the situation changed. The earth trembled as a majestic, dignified, and revered energy suddenly flooded out of the depths of the palace, instantly covering the entire area. Buzz. Winds stirred and clouds began to gather, transforming the clear day into a dark and stormy one. A powerful energy that Wang Chong had never felt before, one that reigned supreme over all things, instantly entered the perceptions of everyone present. The majesty and grandeur of this energy made everyone seem as insignificant as ants. Even the brilliance of powerful existences like eunuch Gao and King Qi seemed dim in the face of this energy, like fireflies trying to compete with the moon. Impudent! A voice emerged from the depths of the Taiji Palace, and when this voice spoke, everyone felt a shiver of fear that came from the depths of their hearts. Even the arrogant King Qi, who was about to battle against Gao Lishir in front of Taiji Palace, now threw himself against the ground in fear, groveling before the imperial stairway. Your Majesty! King Qi faced the ground, his entire body trembling like a mouse running into a cat. Although he was normally arrogant and tyrannical, doing as he pleased, that was because of the people he was doing these things to. In front of the sage emperor, no one dared to act recklessly. The sage emperor was magnanimous, allowing all the ministers to express their views in court. Even in the case of old imperial censor Duan Chao chastising Duan Qian, the sage emperor did not speak, making the matter completely acceptable. In all the world, across all the dynasties, only the sage emperor treated his ministers with such tolerance. The reason King Qi was able to act so brashly in the capital also had to do with the sage emperor's lenient method of rule. But once the sage emperor was enraged, even the unyielding King Qi would have to lower his head and suppress his anger. Boom! The earth shook. The crowd could hear heavy footsteps coming from deep within Taiji Palace. Each of these footsteps seemed to be treading on their hearts. Bzz. An enormous shadow was cast out from the palace. Everyone could see that a new silhouette had clearly emerged at the top of the imperial stairway. There was no sound and no movement. The moment that figure appeared, he instantly became the center of the world. The heavens and earth, the sun and moon, mountains and rivers, all things paid obeisance to him. He loomed like a god in the center of the imperial palace, and the atmosphere instantly turned solemn and respectful. King Qi pressed his face against the ground, not even daring to breathe too loudly. May the emperor live 10,000 years. Shouts filled the air as everyone in front of Taiji Palace, including the guards, ministers, and even Wang Chong kneeled down. In this moment, it was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. As Yao Guangyi kneeled, his entire body broke out in a cold sweat. King Qi had always been this way, always working off of impulse and never thinking about the result. In truth, very few people could make him think about the consequences. But the situation this time was different. The news of the major victory in the southwest and the sage emperor's desire to reward Wang Chong had already been announced to the world. Both within and without the court, the officials from the 6 bureaus and all the other important officials were watching. King Qi's impulsive actions at a moment like this had finally provoked the sage emperor. Li Yu, are you planning to leave now? The sage emperor's voice rang out from above, expressing neither anger nor joy. This lowly subject would not dare. King Qi's face was pale and fraught with terror. As beads of sweat the size of beans dropped to the ground, he instantly became drenched. Though he was usually bold, he was now nothing more than a cowardly mouse. All was quiet. Whenever the sage emperor spoke, other people would try to keep as quiet as possible, leaving only one voice within the imperial palace. At this moment, No one was more deeply affected by all this than Wang Chong. In his last life, the sage emperor was publicly acknowledged by the entire world as the strongest, and after his death, he was widely acknowledged as the one who had been the closest to becoming a god. But Wang Chong had only ever heard of these things. In his last life, he had never met the sage emperor. Although Wang Chong had seen the sage emperor during the regional commander's incident, it had been from a very long distance. He had never been so close, and the sage emperor had not revealed his unfathomable power. So powerful, Wang Chong thought to himself as he lowered his head. The sage emperor was too powerful, more powerful than he could have ever imagined. Even at Wang Chong's strongest in his last life, he would be nothing more than an ant before the sage emperor. At this moment, Wang Chong suddenly deeply understood why, after the calamity, all his seniors from the Great Tang always spoke with regret when mentioning the sage emperor. In the Southwestern War, Wang Chong had slaughtered more 10,000 Tibetan and Mengshi warriors, and his cultivation level could not be described as low. However, in Wang Chong's perception, the sage emperor before him seemed to hold an entire world. It was simply impossible to perceive his limits. Even if Wang Chong had still been the war saint, he would have still failed to grasp the upper limit of the sage emperor's strength. This was what it meant to be truly unfathomable. Since this is the case, then continue to kneel there. The sage emperor's voice rang out in his ear, neither loud nor soft and imbued with a majestic might. King Qi lowered his head even more, his body trembling even faster. Wang Chong. The sage emperor quickly turned his gaze to Wang Chong. In the Southwestern War, you volunteered your service, led the army, and defeated the Mengshi Yusang army. You defended the empire and also defended the safety of the civilians of the Southwest. We are very pleased with your earnest devotion to the empire, and the Wang lineage truly deserves its reputation as a clan ardently loyal to our great Tang. We are very pleased to see that Duke Zhou has had a descendant like you. All was quiet in front of the Taiji Palace. Upon hearing these words, many people showed signs of envy on their faces. The sage emperor's words were an extremely high evaluation of the Wang lineage and an extreme honor. These words alone would be enough to ensure the safety of a clan for decades at the minimum. Even if the clan declined and the descendants were unworthy, they would still be able to live a life of dignity. Chong-er, you've provided a great boon to our entire Wang clan. Wang Zhen clearly understood the weight of his words, and his face was red with excitement. This was the happiest day in all his decades as an official. Wang Chong would not dare. This honor belongs to General Shenyu and the soldiers of the Southwest. Wang Chong only did his duty. The kneeling Wang Chong respectfully said, "Merit is rewarded and faults are punished. There is no need for you to be humble." The earth seemed to hum as the sage emperor's voice echoed through every corner of the palace. "Wang Chong, you still do not have a courtesy name, correct?" Buzz. The officials instantly began to murmur, many of them raising their heads. As they looked at that godlike figure standing in front of Taiji Palace, they vaguely began to understand something. Yes, this lowly subject is only 17 and has never taken the exams to receive a scholarly rank. Thus, this subject's elders have not conferred a courtesy name, Wang Chong sternly said. In the Great Tang, courtesy names could not be conferred by oneself. Only a virtuous and reputed elder could confer a courtesy name. These people would have to either be greatly talented or possess a sterling reputation. As a result, the vast majority of people only had a name, no courtesy name. The sage emperor was of the same generation as Wang Chong's grandfather. Although he was not as old as Wang Chong's grandfather, he was still more than 50, even older than Wang Chong's big uncle, Wang General. In this aspect, he truly could be considered Wang Chong's elder. The crowd grew more tumultuous, more and more people beginning to guess at what was about to occur, but still not daring to believe their own theories. However, these questions didn't last for long before they were answered. "Very good. Since this is the case, we will confer upon you a courtesy name." The sage emperor's words struck everyone dumb. At the base of the imperial stairway, King Qi almost pulverized his teeth by how hard he clenched them. A courtesy name. The sage emperor wanted to confer a courtesy name on Wang Chong? In the past, emperors had bestowed surnames on important officials, but none of them had ever bestowed a courtesy name on an official. His Majesty wants to take Wang Chong as the son of heaven's disciple? On his observation platform, Yao Guangyi was lost in his disappointment and frustration. With his father serving as his model for decades, Yao Guangyi had always possessed a very composed and patient personality, but upon hearing that the sage emperor was going to confer upon Wang Chong a courtesy name, he almost lost control of himself. A noble title, a fief, and a courtesy name. Not even after all the Yao clan's achievements had it received such favor from the Son of Heaven. Putting aside the fact that the sage emperor had specifically created the title of young marquis to confer on Wang Chong, he was also conferring upon him a courtesy name, beginning a new tradition. Just how great of a favor was this? This was a glory that Yao Guangyi wouldn't even dare to imagine. Moreover, the sage emperor is basically giving him a golden medallion of pardon. Yao Guangyi's complexion was ghastly pale. Wang Chong had struggled against the tides, fighting in an outnumbered situation to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat and save the nearly 1 million civilians of the Southwest. In the history of the Great Tang, while there weren't many such individuals, Wang Chong was not the sole example of such a character. The Great Tang war god Wang Zhongxi, the famed generals of Taizong's era, and the war god Su Zhengqian had all performed such heroic feats, but none of them had ever received as weighty a reward as Wang Chong. Yao Guangyi simply couldn't understand why the sage emperor regarded Wang Chong with such favor. Clang! There was a golden flash of light and the crisp cling of a sword. The sage emperor had unsheathed the golden sword of the Son of Heaven and held it over Wang Chong's head. Rumble! The moment the sage emperor unsheathed his sword, the heavens seemed to respond. With the Taiji Palace as the center, a fissure was torn through the sky, splitting the dark clouds in two. Golden sunlight came down, shining upon the sage emperor, Wang Chong, and the imposing Taiji Palace. The sage emperor's divine and august voice echoed through every corner of the palace. The Southwestern War began in the Arai. This was where you began. When the Kuan swims in the water, it is a Kuan, but when it takes to the skies, it is the Peng. We shall confer upon you the courtesy name of Kuanping. We hope that you will not only swim in the waters but also soar into the skies like the Kuan Peng that travels between the heavens and earth. We hope that you will become a subject who supports the country loyally to the end. No one here knew that the sage emperor's voice was not only resounding in the imperial palace, but also in the ears of every person within the capital. At this moment, the bustling and lively capital was as silent as a grave. Crack! In a restaurant in the western part of the city, a man wearing a black cape, sitting in the corner and drinking wine, suddenly snapped the chopsticks in his hand upon hearing this voice. My deepest gratitude, Your Majesty. At this moment, Wang Chong had no idea what was happening outside. When he heard that the sage emperor was conferring on him the courtesy name of Kuanping, he gave a deep bow. As a person who had lived twice, Wang Chong had only met the sage emperor twice, and both had been during this life. Even so, Wang Chong felt only a heartfelt respect for this supreme existence of the Great Tang. No matter what, this supreme sovereign of the ages who had offered his entire life to the Great Tang, sweeping away its enemies and stretching its influence and territory to their limits, was worthy of any person's respect and service. Clang! There was a flash of dazzling golden light as the sage emperor sheathed the golden sword. With this act, all phenomena vanished. Wang Kuanping. At this moment, Wang Chong finally received his first courtesy name, one conferred by the Son of Heaven. He had truly become a disciple of the Son of Heaven. With a set of earth-shaking cheers, Wang Chong's reward ceremony came to an end. In complete contrast to the air of celebration in the capital of the Great Tang, a different scene was taking place at the same time on the Tibetan plateau. The corpses of cows and sheep were piled up and scattered across the land. Livestock who had been brimming with life not too long ago lay toppled on the ground, their eyes wide open in death. Flies were buzzing everywhere in dark clouds gathered around these corpses. Vultures would occasionally shoot out of the clouds, their sharp claws stabbing into decaying flesh. A vulture gave a wary glance at a nearby mastiff and then began to peck away. But this feast of decaying meat was of extreme danger to humans. This foul meat, the stench of which could be smelled several li away, was no longer fit for human consumption. Such a thing had never happened before. The once mighty Yusang Empire was now mired in a severe famine. Although the War of the Southwest was over, the damages from this war on the Yusang Empire were just beginning. Wang Chong had sent Li Sai to the plateau to spread the plague, and this plague was still spreading. From the lands of the Ngari royal lineage, it had now reached the royal capital. Great fires were burning day and night, the smoke from the bonfires of cows and sheep soaring into the heavens. In this perilous situation, this was the only solution that Dalan Trinling, great minister of the Yusang royal capital, could think of. Only the Great Tang had the secret method for treating the sheep plague, and at any rate, treatment was already impossible. The only method left was obstruction. Burning the corpses to prevent the plague from spreading was the only solution the 5 great ministers of Yusang were able to think of. But in contrast to the plague, the War of the Southwest was the true focus of the Yusang Empire. After all, everything had begun when the more than 200,000 Tibetan cavalry had descended from the eastern edge of the plateau. In the end, only 10,000 had come back alive, leaving the entire Ngari royal lineage crippled. And whether it was the death of these 200,000 warriors or the sheep plague creeping across the plateau, they only revolved around a single name: Wang Chong. Daluan Ruozhen, you have truly disappointed this king. It is only because this king believed in your strength that this king sent you to the Ngari royal lineage to assist the 4th prince. In the War of the Southwest, you said that you wanted to ally with Meng Shizhao so that you could emerge the final victor. This king agreed with everything you said. But look, see what you have done. In the royal capital of Yusang, the light was gloomy, massive prayer wheels of gold clinking as they turned. Nearby, piles of ambergris had been thrown into a simple and coarse bronze vessel, from which plumes of fragrant smoke rose into the air. The smoke shrouded the entirety of the palace, making everything seem like a dream. But in this smoke, one could see a figure dressed in a spacious white robe, kneeling on the ground with his face turned to the earth. If one looked carefully, they would notice that this was the great minister of the Ngari who Wang Chong had defeated in the War of the Southwest, Daluan Ruozhen. He had suffered grievous defeat in the southwest, incurring massive casualties. Meanwhile, a plague had swept across the plateau, casting countless Tibetan shepherds into the abyss of misery. In his shock and anger, the Tsenpo had issued an order summoning Daluan Ruozhen to the royal capital for questioning. Your Majesty, this lowly subject has nothing to say. The kneeling Daluan Ruozhen did not even try to defend himself. Bastard! The Tsenpo was infuriated by these words. 200,000 elite cavalry had been lost and a terrible plague was afflicting the plateau, and Daluan Ruozhen was telling him that he had nothing to say. The Tsenpo could not possibly accept this. Come, strip him of his position and jail him to await this king's punishment. The Tsenpo's furious voice thundered, audible from a distance of several li. Daluan Ruozhen's lips curved into a bitter smile. In this visit to the capital, he had long ago predicted how he would end up. As the great minister of the Ngari and the overall commander of the War of the Southwest, he held unquestionable blame for this defeat. No punishment would be excessive. I thoroughly lost this battle. As he kneeled, Daluan Ruozhen thought back to that 17-year-old boy in the distant capital of the Great Tang, who was at this very moment being rewarded. The war against the Great Tang in the southwest had lasted for many days and he had used every method at his disposal. But in the end, he still could not defeat that youth, leaving him with nothing to say. Anyone who was willing to gamble had to be prepared to lose. Bang! The door to the hall opened, and several warriors of the royal capital dressed in heavy bronze armor strode in through the smoke. These warriors were all muscular, their hands and feet brimming with power. After sweeping the room with their eyes, they quickly set their sights on the nearby Daluan Ruozhen. The guards of the royal capital were elites that only the Tsenpo could mobilize, and were all extremely powerful. The Tsenpo would only mobilize them when necessary, and it did not bode well when he did. Wait a moment! As these guards strode toward Daluan Ruozhen, a figure shrouded in smoke near the Tsenpo suddenly spoke up. "Your Majesty, may I be permitted to speak?" As this person spoke, he suddenly left his seat and walked over. As the smoke scattered, it revealed a mustachioed man with a fair complexion. The demeanor he exuded was rather similar to Dalawan Ruozen's, but he appeared even more composed and dignified, his gaze sharper and wiser. In all of the Yusang Empire, there was only one person who dared to be so bold before the Tsenpo and act on his own initiative: the leader of the five ministers, the imperial great minister, Dalen Trinling. Although he led the five ministers, Dalen Trinling was a little younger than Dalawan Ruozen. Even so, whenever he spoke, everyone in the hall, including the Tsenpo and Dalawan Ruozen, showed expressions of respect. In the Yusang Empire, the only person who could dominate solely through intelligence and whose words deserved even the Tsenpo's respect was Dalen Trinling. Dalen was a respectful term of address that meant Prime Minister. This was not a level that Dalawan Ruozen could reach. The Yusang Empire emphasized strength, and there was little nepotism in its government. Becoming the great minister of Yusang and receiving the respect of all its peoples was in itself a proof of one's strength. If great minister has a question, then please speak. The Tsenpo, who had been enraged just a moment ago, seemed to change into a completely different person, his face filling with joy and amity as Dalen Trinling stepped forth. Upon saying these words, the Tsenpo shifted his gaze to the two guards. "You two withdraw for me." "Yes." The two royal capital guards quickly withdrew from the hall, shutting the door as they left. The sage emperor of the Great Tang is rewarding that youngest son of the Wang clan at this very moment. "Do you know of this matter?" Dalen Trinling's gaze was sharp. He took 2 steps forward and stared at Dalawan Ruozen, going straight to the main topic. "Buzz." Dalawan Ruozen was stunned by this news and raised his head. Dalawan Ruozen was well aware of the significance of the sage emperor's rewarding Wang Chong. The Yusang Empire had suffered such a bitter defeat entirely because of the 17-year-old Wang Chong. Now that the sage emperor was richly rewarding Wang Chong, that youngest son of the Wang clan would gradually begin to do more and more for the Great Tang, present more and more of a threat to the Yusang Empire. "Humph, very good. It looks like you've noticed. The Southwestern War has already passed. No matter how many warriors the Ngari royal lineage lost or how massive is the scope of this plague, all of it is the past. Death is inevitable in war, and prices must be paid. In our past wars with the Great Tang, we have suffered defeats of even greater magnitude. But even so, we did not come away empty-handed. At the very least, we know of a name. Wang Chong, wasn't it?" Dalen Trinling snorted. His gaze was as sharp as the edge of a saber, its cold light piercing through even the smoke in the hall. Astonished, Dalawan Ruozen hurriedly lowered his head in subservience. Victory and defeat are both commonplace for a soldier. Regardless of the price we have paid today, in the future the Great Tang will pay an even greater price. But before that, why don't you tell us about this Wang Chong? Ruozen understands. In the clouds of smoke, Dalawan Ruozen's voice alone rang out through the hall. "Your Majesty, Great Minister, in the Southwestern War, Ruozen is undoubtedly responsible for the defeat of the Empire. No matter what punishment is issued, this guilty subject is willing to accept it. But that youngest son of the Wang clan, if it really is as Great Minister says, that he has received the great favor of the Great Tang Sage Emperor, then in the future, he will definitely become a fatal affliction for all of Yusang. His demeanor is composed and confident. Even in the most intense and perilous moments of the battle, when the Great Tang army was on the verge of being annihilated, he remained unpanicked and continued to command the army. Moreover, his tactics and strategy are mysterious and seemingly limitless, utterly impossible to predict. More importantly, although he is only 17, he is farsighted, his methods vicious. This sheep plague is his handiwork. For him to have such foresight and stratagems at only the age of 17, I'm afraid that if he is allowed to mature, that old incident of the royal capital will repeat itself." These final words seemed to thud against the ground, throwing the entire hall into an uproar. Whether it was the imperial great minister Dalen Trinling or the most revered senpo of the Yusang Empire sitting in the rear, everyone was stupefied. Not even Dalen Trinling, who had begun this line of questioning, had ever expected Daluan Ruozen's assessment of that youngest son of the Wang clan to be so high. The old incident of the royal capital. Any Tibetan understood what this phrase represented. Yusang was protected by natural barriers. A lofty altitude and a thin atmosphere were the Yusang Empire's best defenses. All the foreign warriors who entered this place would find their strength greatly limited. Only the Tibetans, the natural inhabitants of this world, remained unaffected. As a result, Tibetans also called themselves the people chosen by heaven. But it wasn't like Yusang had remained totally undefeated throughout history. At least in the last century or so, the walls of Yusang's royal capital had been breached twice. The first incident was during the era of Tang Taizong by the war god Su Zhengqin. The second time was 23 years ago by the great Tang war god, now Crown Prince's junior guardian Wang Zhongxi. Although he had not actually entered the royal capital, there had been scarcely a difference. This was because all the important officials, that Senpo included, as well as all the people in the royal capital, had already retreated far away. The royal capital they left behind had been an empty city. It was precisely because Wang Zhongxi saw an empty city that he decided to withdraw his troops. But that unstoppable edge and the large-scale upheaval and panic the incident had caused across the plateau had made it so that all Tibetans would feel a deep fear whenever they heard Wang Zhongxi's name. In the Southwestern War, the entire Ngari royal lineage had essentially been crippled, but that was still only a local war. Yusang had 4 royal domains and 1 royal capital, so the losses suffered by the Ngari royal lineage were not too great of a wound to the overarching Yusang Empire. The true factor was the sheep plague. However, Daluan Ruozen was saying that this Wang Chong also had the potential to repeat that old incident and breach the walls of the royal capital. This was an assessment of the highest order, especially since in the past few decades, the Yusang Empire had done all it could to increase the prosperity of the empire, and had even begun to learn the forging methods of the Great Tang. It had purchased a great quantity of refined iron and weapons, and also begun to raise and breed many warhorses so that it could train a large army of elite cavalry. Daluan Ruozen's assessment in the present seemed even more inconceivable. Great Minister, Your Majesty, this guilty subject has seen many renowned officials and generals of the Great Tang while presiding over the Ngari royal lineage, including the Great Tang Minister of War Zhangqiu Jianxiong and Longshi's Geshu Han. But none of them could make me feel so threatened as that youngest son of the Wang clan. This lowly subject advises that no matter what cost we must pay, we must eliminate that youngest son of the Wang clan. Daluan Ruozen spoke these final words with utmost sincerity. The generals and ministers of the 4 royal lineages could not enter the royal capital as they pleased. Daluan Ruozen keenly understood that this was his last and only chance to convince the Tsenpo and the great minister. For this matter, I know what we must do. Dalen Trinling stared into Daluan Ruozen's eyes. After a long time, he slowly closed his eyes. The fragrant smoke cloaked his body, making his figure indistinct, but a faint resolve could already be seen on the intelligent face of the Imperial Great Minister. The Imperial Great Minister and the Royal Great Ministers had all made their name through their intelligence. In some cases, a few short words were enough to voice many questions. It truly is a divine mountain. At this moment, while the royal capital of the Yusang Empire was submerged in silence, in the distant southwest of the Great Tang, an erect figure, sumptuously dressed and with a long and slender face, was standing at the base of a mountain. This middle-aged man carried an air of elegance and confidence as he stood there, a white oil paper umbrella decorated with images of pear blossoms in his hand. Before his eyes was the place where Wang Chong and his 100,000 Annan Protectorate army soldiers had fought their desperate battle and defeated the 500,000 soldiers of the Mengshi Yusang army. This nameless mountain in the Great Tang's southwest had gained a new name after the war, the Mountain of God. It had already become a mountain of good luck and fortune to the southwest. The Southwestern War had just been too inconceivable. 100,000 soldiers had defeated the 500,000 valiant warriors of the Mengshi Yusang army, even killing 400,000. At the crucial moment of the battle, when the Tang soldiers were running short on water, they actually managed to dig water out of the bare mountain surface. If a god was not watching over them, How could all this be explained? So this mountain of the southwest must be a divine mountain. As for that young man from the Wang clan who had stood at the peak of this mountain, energetically commanding his 100,000 soldiers and vanquishing the Mengshi Yusang army with a faint smile on his face, protecting the nearly 1 million civilians of the southwest, he was naturally the incarnation of this god, perhaps even the god's son. Because only he was able to summon that supreme deity. The mountain was covered in bruises. After that intense battle, its surface was uneven, with many places showing marks of explosions of energy and fierce combat. All over, one could see that the tan soil of the mountain had turned a reddish-brown. In a few areas that had been depressed the most, it was even possible to see dried purplish objects. These were condensed pieces of blood. The middle-aged man's eyes were half closed as he took in a deep breath, smelling that thick stench of blood that still had yet to dissipate. The man showed no signs of disgust. On the contrary, he seemed to be a little intoxicated. To some people, war was a vicious plague that should be avoided at all costs. But to other people, it was the finest source of nourishment. War was paradise to those warriors who truly craved battle. The most beautiful sights were there for them to witness. The moment where life faded away was the most gorgeous of vistas. The middle-aged man fully closed his eyes, facing the divine mountain as he began to imagine the hundreds of thousands of warriors on both sides charging to fill their lines and being cut down like wheat stalks. The intoxication on his face increased, thickened. So beautiful! The man let out a long moan. King Song's arrival had completely altered the situation in the southwest. All the soldiers of the Annan Protectorate Army had left with King Song to the border between the Great Tang and Mengshizhao. The Mountain of God was currently deserted. Your Highness, the Annan Protectorate Army might be patrolling this area. We should move quickly. Don't forget, His Majesty entrusted us with the task of investigating the truth behind the grievous defeat of the Mengshi Yusang alliance. A man nearby spoke. Although he was dressed like those merchants who frequently traversed the Tea-Horse Road, beneath his clothes, he was all muscle. His eyes, which were constantly and warily observing his surroundings, and the long package wrapped in white cloth at his waist both indicated his true identity. This was a powerful warrior and no ordinary one either. Only one kind of person would have his sort of straight posture, a soldier. Ha ha ha! What are you afraid of? The Southwestern War is already over. The attention of the Tang is all on the Arai border. If there's nothing happening, what would they be doing running over here? The slender-faced man raised his pear-blossom umbrella and laughed, his expression leisurely and free. His demeanor and expression made it very hard to believe that this man was one of the 8 kings beneath Yun Geisaman of Goguryeo in the northeast, holding the same title as King Sojurim but standing at an even higher level, King Michin I. In the lands of Yuzhou to the northeast, King Michin of Goguryeo was one of the top priorities on Zhang Shogui's kill list. This King Michin had dealt him many a setback on the battlefield. Unlike the other kings, King Michin had 4 long sabers. Normally, however, he only used 1 saber when fighting an enemy. In a large-scale battle, he would use 2 sabers. As for a 3rd saber, as of yet, no one had been able to force him to use his 3rd saber. King Michin was cruel and bloodthirsty, completely unlike the spymaster King Sojurim, who delighted in concealing himself. In the fierce confines of the battlefield, he was an insane machine, growing stronger the more he killed, immersing himself deeper and deeper into the battle. It was rumored that he had a habit of using human blood to brew fine wine that he would guzzle down. And King Michin never cared about his own life. His only enjoyments in life were intense and frenzied battle and the thick stench of death that covered the battlefield. The Cheon of King Michin did not mean a river of water, but a flood of blood washing over the world. In the Southwestern War, more than 400,000 Mengshi Yusang warriors and more than 100,000 Tang warriors had died in battle. When King Michin heard of this matter, he immediately volunteered to venture into the Tang interior to investigate the southwestern battlefield. In addition, with regards to His Majesty's mission, who said that I wasn't investigating? His eyes half closed, King Michin raised his intoxicated nose and sniffed at the air. Suddenly, he made a flying leap, Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Moving like a ghost, he arrived at the southeastern edge of the summit in mere moments. Ha ha ha! What a thick stench of blood! On this entire battlefield, I can only smell the scent of one living person. None other than a person slaughtering to their heart's content. How many people did this person kill? 5,000? 6,000? No, it is exactly 11,087 people. How formidable! King Michin raised his head and madly laughed. If Wang Chong were here, he would definitely be stunned. Because the place King Michin was speaking from was exactly where the southeastern lines had been broken, and he alone had killed more than 10,000 Mengshi Zhao and Tibetan soldiers. The battle was already over, the corpses buried. But King Michin had only sniffed the air to learn the exact number of people Wang Chong had killed. Probably not even Wang Chong knew this number. "Milord, are you saying that one person killed 10,000 people here?" A figure jumped out of the rear to arrive at King Michin's side, looking at the vacant surroundings in alarm. Ha ha ha! This is a comrade. Inconceivable physical strength and an inconceivable internal energy. And also an inconceivable fighting and killing intent. King Michin paid no attention to his guard, his voice growing more and more excited. That's right. I also smelled a very unique blood. It was restless blood, like it was on fire. With these last words, King Michin seemed to wake from a stupor. A contemplative expression quickly appeared on his face. I hear that, in the capital of the Great Tang, the Berserker syndrome runs through the lineage of the Wang clan. Once the Berserker syndrome breaks out, the blood will begin to boil, the victim falling into a mad slaughter that can't distinguish friend from foe. Could this be the result of the Berserker syndrome? King Michin began to get more and more excited. I didn't think that I would be so lucky as to smell the blood of a warrior with Berserker syndrome. It's simply sublime. This is the true blood of slaughter. And the strength was so long-lasting that they managed to kill 10,000 people. How wonderful would it be if I could get my hands on this blood? But I heard that the Berserker syndrome skipped generations, and it would only affect one person per generation. The inheritor of this condition for this generation of the Wang clan is called Wang Bei, and he's currently imprisoned in the prison within the imperial palace. How could the Berserker syndrome appear here? King Michin's smile faded as he narrowed his eyes in thought. After a few moments, he suddenly gave a chuckle of understanding. Tulin, this is where you come in. Inform His Majesty that the youngest son of the Wang clan also has Berserker syndrome. 2 people with Berserker syndrome have appeared in a single generation. Interesting, interesting. The Gogrian warrior called Tulin standing behind him was dumbfounded. But King Michin was still speaking. However, Berserker syndrome is known for being able to warp one's will and cause the patient to kill both friend and foe. It seems like this youngest son of the Wang clan was constantly killing, but he only killed Mengshi Zhao and Tibetan soldiers. This self-control is truly astonishing. An error of a hair would lead to a discrepancy of 1,000 li. Although the Berserker syndrome bestowed incredible strength on a warrior, once one lost control and turned the other direction, it would have been 10,000 soldiers of the Annan Protectorate Army dying to Wang Chong's sword. Swords did not discriminate among those they killed, including people on one's own side. But across this region of the battlefield, King Michin could not smell the blood of any Tang soldier. Not just anyone could control themselves so well. What a troublesome character! King Michin muttered to himself for a while, his pupils constricting as he began to understand the difficulties he faced. This is so upsetting. You can kill people like flies, so why control yourself? Undeniable envy surfaced on King Michin's face. If he possessed such a powerful bloodline ability, it would be a match made in heaven. Alas, this boy owned this powerful strength yet insisted on controlling it. This fact was extremely upsetting to the bloodthirsty King Michin. Buzz! As he was speaking, his mind was suddenly given a jolt. A powerful energy had appeared in King Michin's perception. His voice came to a halt as he fiercely turned his head in the direction of the energy. At the base of the mountain, figures dressed in black merchant-like clothes were currently inspecting something, their heads lowered. The leader of this group also sensed something. Raising his head, he glanced up at the place King Michin was standing. Their gazes met in the air like two bolts of electricity clashing. But then they mutually looked away as if nothing had happened at all. "Humph! It seems like the Turks have arrived," King Michin sneered. Although they were separated by a significant distance, King Michin had immediately noticed the high nasal bridge so emblematic of the Turks. The lands of Yuzhou in the Great Tang's northeast possessed a very complicated geography. The Turks, Khitans, Shi, Great Tang, and Goguryeo were all mixed together in this place. From a certain perspective, the three powers besides Goguryeo and the Great Tang should have been natural allies, but in private, all of them viewed the rest with contempt. King Michin shared the same view. "Your Highness, do we need to give them a greeting?" the Goguryan guard Tulin asked. "Humph, what sort of greeting could we give them? And besides, do you think you're a match for them?" From King Michin's vantage point at the summit, he could see everything around him. It wasn't merely one group that had arrived at the Mountain of God. The Hu, the Goguryans, the Turks, the people of the western regions, the Arabs, the Caracenians, various sorts of people disguised as various occupations, had all unintentionally arrived at nearly the same time. In the Southwestern War, an army of 200,000 had contended against the Mengshi, Yusang army of 500,000, first losing and then winning, eventually slaying more than 400,000 enemy soldiers. This war had not only altered the structure of the Southwest, but also the relationship of the Great Tang with the states that bordered it. Those powers that had lurked on the border, ready to leap, began to retreat once they heard news that the Mengshi, Yusang alliance had been defeated. To Mengshi Zhao and Yusang, defeat in this war meant the loss of the best chance to occupy the Great Tang's southwest. To the other powers bordering the Great Tang, this defeat was the loss of a superb chance to join hands and drag down the Great Tang from the throne of hegemony that it had sat on for several centuries. A centipede could die, but it would never fall over. Although the Great Tang was in decline and a shadow of its former self, the edge revealed by its army was still as sharp and frightening as ever. "Lord Yabgu, it's the Goguryans," whispered one of the Turks disguised as merchants at the base of the mountain. "It's King Michin." The leading Turk was squatting on the ground and examining the surroundings. The Turks and Goguryans both bordered the Great Tang and usually had many dealings with each other. King Michin was famous for his love of slaughter, and the energy on his body was recognizable even from a distance of several li. No disguise could conceal it. In addition, Goguryans carried 2 or 3 sabers which were easily recognizable by their white cloth wrapping. To the people outside the Great Tang, such a trait was even more recognizable. "Don't worry about them. Time is limited. Once too many people gather, the Great Tang will quickly take notice," the leading Turk ordered. For this simple scouting mission, the Eastern Turks had actually sent out a Yabgu. This matter was very important for the Turks. The Great Tang had actually managed to produce an elite commander who could lead an army in an outnumbered situation and defeat both Daluan Ruozan and Duan Gachuan. No normal scout or spy would be enough to investigate such an important matter. Only a person with sufficient battlefield experience and wisdom would be able to identify the clues. In addition, there was another important matter that needed to be answered. Even now, none of the foreign powers bordering the Great Tang, the Eastern and Western Turks included, knew how the Mengshi Yusang army had lost. Daluan Ruozan, Huashu Huaizong, and Duan Gachuan were all renowned generals of the current age. With these 3 commanders and an absolute advantage in numbers, a defeat was nigh unthinkable. This matter was like an enigma that troubled everyone's mind. This was why, more than 1 month after the end of the war, the foreign powers around the Great Tang had dispatched people to investigate the situation. "Let's go!" The Yabgu leading the group quickly stood up and set off with his group in another direction. Around 15 minutes later, the group of Turks had walked the entire mountain, finally stopping in front of a massive pit. "Is this where the king of Mengshi Zhao, Zheluofeng, was heavily wounded?" The black-clothed Yabgu squatted at the edge of the pit, his hand stroking the edge. He then raised his head and took stock of his surroundings. Devastation surrounded the pit, signs of intense clashes scarring the landscape. These scars would be meaningless to an ordinary person, but an elite expert like this Turkic Yabgu saw them completely differently. The black-clothed Yabgu half-closed his eyes. In an instant, a scene appeared in his mind. The mountain was still the same mountain, but countless soldiers had appeared, their different armor clearly indicating that they belonged to 3 different forces. These people were engaged in a frenzied melee. In the middle of these dense ranks, the Yabgu could clearly see 4 giants, and in front of these 4 giants, another enormous figure, shining with golden light, was currently striding toward the pit. If those experts who had participated in the Southwestern War were to see the scene playing out in this Turkic Yabgu's mind, they would assuredly be stupefied. This Yabgu had clearly managed to replay the scenes from the battle on that day. Those scars and fissure in the ground were wholly sufficient for him to visualize the battlefield. In both the Eastern and Western Turkic Khaganates, the only person capable of this feat was the Eastern Turks' Ghost Eye Yabgu. The Ghost Eye Yabgu looked forward and suddenly said, "I understand." Zheluofeng fell at precisely this place. Wang Yan and Shenyu Zhongtong, 2 powerful experts, joined forces against 1 mighty miracle god and 1 Vajra god. It's no wonder Zheluofeng was heavily injured. He was too careless. But Zheluofeng was also a wise sovereign. No mediocre figure could strengthen Mengshi Zhao to this level. How could he be caught completely off guard? Such a thing shouldn't have happened. Behind the Ghost Eye Yabgu, an Eastern Turkic general furrowed his brow in doubt. The Ghost Eye Yabgu was silent. To tell the truth, when he had heard about the defeat in the southwest and Zheluofeng falling into a coma after being heavily injured, he had found it very strange. As a sovereign, it was his duty to preside in the rear and only take to the battlefield when absolutely necessary. This was a most basic principle of the battlefield. Zheluofeng should have been in the rear and remained uninjured. Even after racking his mind, he couldn't think of a reason. The Ghost Eye Yabgu swept his gaze questioningly over the surroundings. Finally, it passed over the summit and stopped, seeming to notice something. It wasn't that he was being imprudent, but because someone was baiting him. That boy Wang Chong is a very deep schemer. Zheluofeng was like a plaything in the palm of his hands. The Yabgu gave a deep sigh. Although more than a month had passed since the battle, nothing here could be kept secret from him. It was like he could see the furious Zheluofeng seeing that figure on the summit jeering at him. It was precisely those jeers that robbed Zheluofeng of his rationality. Wang Chong was a name completely unfamiliar to the Turks who dwelled beyond the walls, on the vast steppe. Although none of them had heard of it before, after today, all the foreign kingdoms beyond the walls of the Great Tang would have this name ringing in their ears like thunder. It would be impossible to not know of this name. An individual who could defeat Daluan Ruozhen and Huashu Huizong, and kill hundreds of thousands of Mengshi Zhao and Tibetan soldiers, was someone that no power could ignore. When one considered that they had known nothing of him before, gathering information on him now became an utmost priority. This matter was not something any minor scout could accomplish. It wasn't strange at all for the various powers to send important figures to investigate. But Zheluofeng is no fool. How could that Wang Chong be sure that his plan would succeed? The Turkic general asked in confusion. The Ghost Eye Yabgu was quiet for a few moments before suddenly giving a laugh. "Ha! Do you still have the first intelligence report from the southwest? Let me take a look at it." "It's here, my lord." The Turkic general quickly passed over a letter covered in Turkic characters. He, as expected. The Yabgu looked at it for a few moments before giving a nod and smiling. From the reports back then, smoke was rising from the rear of the Mengshi Zhao army. Their granaries were attacked, all their provisions destroyed. Mengshi Zhao had hundreds of thousands of soldiers, and the amount of food needed to feed them is no small number. Moreover, Zheluofeng was an ambitious character. He wanted to use the southwest as a jumping board for an even greater undertaking. With millions of pickles of provisions burned, the ambitions Zheluofeng had held for decades were all wasted. This is the true reason for Zheluofeng's loss of rationality. The Yabgu sighed, his eyes showing a deep admiration and apprehension. If the battle hadn't been at its climax, Zheluofeng wouldn't have been unaccompanied. If Duan Gechuan had not entered the fray, he would definitely have advised him against the action. If the Annan Protectorate Army had not been exerting so much pressure that they absorbed the attention of the Mengshi Yusang Army, the granaries would not have been so underdefended. Regardless of which one it was, if that boy were only missing one of them, he would have never been able to provoke Zheluofeng, and this battle would have ended in a completely different way. While he stood on the summit and lured Zheluofeng over, he had Wang Yan and Shenyu Zhongtong in their godly avatars strike from the sides. All the schemes were closely interlocked, and despite all the renowned generals I have fought and all the battles I have experienced, I have never encountered an opponent with such foresight and such thorough plans. This is truly a frightening opponent. I truly can't believe that he's only 17. The Turkic intelligence report had only said that Wang Chong had a divine strategic mind, but the ghost Yabgu, through his observations of the battlefield, had obtained far more information than the intelligence report could ever provide. The Yabgu could tell that this youth of the Great Tang he had never met had begun planning everything long before he began to move. Lion City by the Arai, the steel walls of the Mountain of God, the sheep plague on the Tibetan plateau, and the burning granaries in the rear of the Mengshi Zhao army. All these plans were so tightly interlocked with each other that they presented no flaw. Just thinking about this made the Yabgu's scalp go numb and sweat bead out of his forehead. When Daluan Ruozhen and Duan Getuen were still only thinking about the battlefield in front of them, that 17-year-old boy had already cast off old conventions and placed his gaze over the world. It was like nothing could ever stop him. Such thoughts and schemes were enough to make one shiver in fear. It was no fluke that Daluan Ruozhen and Duan Getuen had lost. In truth, the ghost Yabgu was somewhat relieved that this war had happened in the southwest, not the northeast. The ones facing that boy had been Daluan Ruozhen and Duan Getuen, not him and the Eastern Turkic Khaganate behind him. Tell the Khagan to redouble our efforts to gather information on Wang Chong. We have to watch his every move. If possible, we need to eliminate him as quickly as possible, but it can't be traced back to us. Yes, Lord Yabgu. The Mountain of God in the southwest, the battlefield between the Great Tang and the Mengshi Yusang alliance, was to many factions a threshold that they would not be able to detour. At this moment, the factions that had come here were not simply the Gogurians and the Turks. In another area of the Mountain of God, several Hu merchants with wise gazes had gathered together. The Great Tang was in an age where foreigners were welcomed with open arms. All the Hu merchants who had once been refused at the gates were now permitted to enter the capital of the Great Tang and even carry out business in the interior. To the people of the Great Tang, seeing a few Hu in the interior was no longer that strange. But the deep green eyes of these people revealed their true identities. These people were actually Arabs. To the Hu, the Arabs were very different from them and were recognizable at a glance. But to the people of the Great Tang, the Hu and Arabs all looked the same and were impossible to distinguish. I found it! An Arab spoke in his Arabic tongue that foreigners would not be able to understand. At the base of the mountain, these Arabs had finally found the item they sought. This was a shard of armor. The Annan Protectorate Army had already cleaned up the battlefield, but this was a large region covered with hundreds of thousands of corpses. It was simply impossible to completely clean up, and there would always be some fish that escaped the net. Such a smooth cut! What a sharp sword! An Arab picked up the two shards on the ground and raised them high in the air to examine them. This was a piece of shoulder armor formed from plates. In his hand, he could feel that this armor was both thick and heavy. Tibetan armor was so crude that even the Arabs viewed it with deep contempt. But the focus the Tibetans placed on the forging process meant that though their armor was crude, it had reached an extremely high level in another aspect. It was heavy, but also extremely tough and durable. This sort of armor would even give the Arabs and their extremely sharp weapons a headache. But this was not the reason they had appeared here. At this moment, the Arabs were all focused on the cut that had cleaved the shoulder armor in two. So smooth, so sharp. It's almost like a mirror. Is this from that Wuxia steel sword, said to be created by that person from the Great Tang? As the Arabs examined the shards of armor, their eyes glimmered with a searing light. Unlike the other foreign powers bordering the Great Tang, the Arabs were not very interested in the war. To them, there was one thing that was of even greater priority. With steel weapons. There was a trifling bit of news from this war that had attracted the notice of the entire Abbasid Caliphate. Apparently, a small army of about 1,000 soldiers had been completely equipped with Wuxia steel weapons. In battle, this army had managed to defeat a force of Tibetan cavalry 10 times their number, and their momentum had been essentially unstoppable. In the end stages of the battle, this army had dealt a massive blow to the Mengshi Yusang army. To the Abbasid Caliphate, which possessed incredible forging skills and constantly pursued weapons of higher quality and killing power, this news was earth-shaking. After all, this was only 1,000 weapons, and the users had been from the Great Tang, which did not specialize or have much expertise in cavalry. If the Arabs could get a hold of such sharp weapons, even if only 10,000, then given that the Abbasid Caliphate was far more powerful than Yusang, they could dominate the battlefield. I can't believe it. Such thick plate armor was cut through like it was paper. I know. Our smithing arts are at a far higher level than the Great Tang's, but none of our weapons could ever do this. The Hyderabad ore is actually this formidable. If I wasn't seeing it with my own eyes, I definitely wouldn't believe it. Alas, the smiths of the Caliphate have already tried various methods but still haven't reached this level. I really don't know how that Tang called Wang Chong managed to do it. The capabilities of a Wuxia steel weapon on the battlefield have already been verified. No matter what, we have to get our hands on some. At any price. As this group stared at the smooth cut through the plate armor, their eyes practically glowed with fervor. No matter what they thought in the past, starting from today, all the Arabs, especially their craftsmen, would know the name of one great Tang youth, Wang Chong. This was a true god of craftsmen. The people from the western regions, the Caracenians, one group after another appeared around the mountain. But it wasn't just the Hu and the foreigners who were paying attention to this war. Zhang Shogui, Fuming Lingcha, Geshu Han, Gao Xianji, and Sishun, these protector generals and great general of the Great Tang, had dispatched their best and most trusted scouts to investigate the truth in the southwest. More than a month had passed since the conclusion of the war, but to these supreme commanders of the Great Tang, it was still a complete enigma how Wang Chong had managed to defeat the Mengshi Yusang army. Although they had received all the information concerning the war, there was some information that could not be explained through words on paper. To many of these great generals, the name of Wang Chong was that of an insignificant nobody. Many of them had even prepared themselves for a major defeat in the southwest and peril coming in from all sides. But at this time, the southwest was actually won. This caught everyone by surprise. Wang Chong was just a simple name, but now, even those great generals who hated him to the bone from the regional commanders incident like Fuming Lingcha, Gao Xianji, Geshu Han, and Sishun did not dare to look down on him. I can't believe it. What a desperate battle. Even the soil has turned red. Just how many people died here? My lord might be wrong. This Wang Chong is even scarier than we imagined. Countless scouts, investigators, and spies gazed at the scars of the Southwestern War in shock. They were all people that lived on the hellish landscape of the battlefield, so they had a deep understanding of it. Far too many people had died on this battlefield. Whether it was the Northwest, the Northeast, or Biting, these places were embroiled in war throughout the year. But none of those wars had ever had this sort of desperate aura. To these veterans, this cold and sinister stench lay far too thick on this land. And unlike those generals who resided high above, all these lower-level veterans could feel the intense struggles and screams of these soldiers in their final moments. 100,000 soldiers of the Annan Protectorate Army had contended against 500,000 soldiers of the Mengshi Yusang Army. When they first heard of this news, they found it very difficult to believe because conflicts on the border rarely reached this scale. But when they saw the size of the battlefield and the layers of red soil that extended several feet into the ground, none of them had any more doubts. Shock was the only emotion that all those who arrived here felt. Just the thought of that boy called Wang Chong, leading the 100,000 soldiers of the Annan Protectorate Army in carving a bloody path through and defeating the 500,000 soldiers of the Mengshi Yusang Army, made these soldiers feel a deep respect for this youngest son of the Wang clan. Flap, flap. Countless pigeons took off in all directions, bringing new information to their masters. Whether it was the generals of the border or the foreign powers around the Great Tang, The intelligence reports of these powers had all added a name with extremely great weight. Wang Chong. Putting aside the activity on the Great Tang's southwest and its borders, the empire itself was shrouded in an air of celebration and liveliness. Gallop! Make way, make way! Not long after Wang Chong's reward ceremony concluded, red-uniformed cavalry galloped out of the gates of the palace to various places in the capital. Swish! The leader of this unit of cavalry dismounted and quickly strode toward the city wall, upon which he pasted a pronouncement written on yellow paper and stamped with the seal of the 6 bureaus. After doing this, the unit of cavalry quickly departed. Ha ha ha! Wang Chong has been made a marquis. A marquis? The young marquis? I've never heard of it before. Did His Majesty make this position just so that he could make him a marquis? Hey, just based on his achievements in the southwest alone, what does a marquis matter? This is a young hero. A grand reward is only expected. That's right. Here. Ha ha. It seems like His Majesty greatly favors him. This is a blessing for the empire. Once the cavalry left, a large group of people gathered around the announcement. Peddlers and carriers, merchants and porters, restaurant owners, performers, calligraphers and painters. Make way, make way! A voice suddenly came from outside. At some point, an old man who appeared to be a teacher squeezed his way through the crowd and to the proclamation. Let me take a look. Ha ha! Old man, what are you squeezing in for? Is someone of your age trying to learn how to be conferred the title of marquis? Someone jeered, eliciting roars of laughter from the crowd. But the old teacher appeared to not hear. He squinted at the announcement, his expression focused, a finger pressing against the word that he had seen from a distance. A fief! A fief! I didn't see wrongly. In the 300 years of the Great Tang, His Majesty actually broke tradition and conferred upon him a fief. The teacher's voice was loud, his expression fraught with excitement. Buzz! An invisible energy seemed to suck the air out of the crowd. Their laughter suddenly dwindled away into absolute silence. A fief! Anyone who had lived in the capital for a long time and experienced various celebrations would know at the very least that conferring of title without fief was a tradition of the Great Tang. In the Sage Emperor's era, no one had ever been conferred a fief. No one had expected the Sage Emperor to confer Wang Chong a fief. This was a massive show of favor. Marquis, a fief, and even a courtesy name bestowed by the Son of Heaven. This day was foreordained to be Wang Chong's day. All his rewards had broken the precedent of the Great Tang. Yet no one felt this to be inappropriate. On the contrary, the streets were festooned with ribbons and lanterns while firecrackers were ignited. Some actors and performers were even performing on the ends of the streets for free. Only those who had truly lived through the Southwestern War understood just what sort of panic it had evoked in the capital. The mobilizations of soldiers, the news of defeats, the various foreign powers encroaching on the border. All of these things had made the capital quake. Not even the oldest person in the capital had ever experienced something like this. A vast empire threatened by foreign powers from all sides actually found itself without a single soldier to use. This was true terror. But in their most terror-stricken moment came the news that Wang Chong had won a major victory in the southwest. At the most dangerous and riskiest of moments, this youngest son of the Wang clan had desperately pulled against the tides and rescued the southwest, rescued the empire. Whether he was made a marquis, conferred a fief, or bestowed a courtesy name, no one felt any impropriety. All this was deserved. Flap, flap. A carrier pigeon flapped its wings as it flew through the air, landing in a heavily guarded estate in the western part of the city. On the board hanging over the gate, 2 words had been written in a bold and flamboyant style: Su Residence. The Sage Emperor has richly rewarded Wang Chong, making him a marquis, giving him a fief, and even bestowing a courtesy name on him. This is a problem. In the Su clan residence, Su Qichin's big uncle Su Henian frowned as he read the letter in his hand, a deep concern appearing in his eyes. During the Southwestern War, under pressure from King Qi and for the sake of political reasons, the Su clan had placed Su Qichin under strict house arrest, driving away the guards from the Wang clan and breaking off its relationship with it. The Mengshi Yusang army in the southwest had been 500,000 strong, and it had renowned generals like Daluan Ruozan and Huashu Huaizong commanding it. Anyone could have seen that victory was impossible in the southwest and occupation was just a matter of time. Even now, Su Henian did not think his judgment was wrong. If he had to pick between the Wang clan and King Qi, it would undoubtedly be the imperial clansman who was more powerful and worthy of his trust. Thus, Su Henian had placed Su Qiqin under house arrest and broken off her communications with the Wang clan. No one could have expected the Southwest to be one and that boy called Wang Chong to be the greatest contributor. A marquis, a fief, a courtesy name. The first news from the imperial palace had been like a needle stabbed deep into Su Henian's heart, causing his expression to contort into a nasty grimace. Even a fool could see that the Wang clan was now in good graces and the sage emperor highly favored the youngest son of the Wang clan. For a long period of time, one could expect the Wang clan to be shrouded in the emperor's favor, and this would only increase with time. Reporting. While Su Henian was sitting in his room in worry, a voice suddenly came from outside. Master, the newly titled young marquis has come to pay a visit. He is already at the gate. What? Su Henian's body trembled at this news as he bolted up. This was truly a case of speak of Chow Chow and Chow Chow arrives one. He had never expected the main character of the reward ceremony to already be at the Su clan's gates. Does he plan to use his momentum to publicly denounce us? Su Henian's gaze chilled as this idea came to mind. He had a rough idea of Su Qiqin's relationship with this youngest son of the Wang clan. They were both in the age of youthful romance, so the relationship between man and woman could not be escaped. Su Qiqin had been placed under house arrest, and the first thing Wang Chong had done after being made a marquis was to rush over to the Su residence to pay a visit. His goal was as plain as day. Tell him that we won't see him, Su Henian immediately ordered with a wave of his sleeve. Who cared if it was the Wang clan? The Su clan had existed for centuries, its origins traced back to the final days of the Sui. Even if it was a clan of ministers and generals, the Su clan could still choose whether they wanted to meet or not. Yes, master. Wait a moment. The servant outside had just turned and walked a few steps when Su Henian called him back. Humph, a marquis, a fief, and a courtesy name from the son of heaven. That boy from the Wang clan is currently at the peak of his success. The entire capital is watching him. If we refuse him at the door, the Su clan will become the target of the entire Great Tang. That's exactly what this brat intends to do, which is why he's acting so confident. After the victory in the southwest, Su Henian was well aware of how great Wang Chong's reputation in the Great Tang was. For Wang Chong to pay a visit on his own initiative at a time like this, if the Su clan were to refuse him at the gate for no reason, not even he could predict what the Su clan would end up as once the people were done with their rebukes. No one in the capital would dare to not give Wang Chong face. After all, his body had just been branded with the mark of the Son of Heaven's disciple. Who cares if you're a new marquis? No one can stop my Su clan from putting its own daughter under house arrest. I would like to see what sort of tricks you can play. Su Henian was inwardly furious. Come, lay out the incense table. Let us go out and welcome our guest. Su Henian led a large group of maids, servants, and guards in a majestic procession marching toward the main gate. Boom! The gate of the Su clan suddenly flew open. The gloomy-faced Su Henian stepped out, followed by the clan guards. A bronze carriage was parked outside. Su Henian immediately noticed that a young man dressed in a crimson ceremonial robe was quietly standing next to the carriage, his back to the gate. The gentle breeze ruffled the young man's sleeves, causing him to exude an aura of elegance and grace. Lord Su, I have long awaited this first meeting. Hearing the activity behind him, Wang Chong smiled and shook out his sleeves before turning around. At the age of 17, Wang Chong was in his prime, and as a descendant of a clan of ministers and generals, he possessed a lofty demeanor that no ordinary scion could possess. Coupled with the fair and handsome face he had inherited from his parents and the calm and composed attitude that he had tempered on the cruel battlefield, the current Wang Chong exuded an aura of serenity and elegance that anyone would admire. A dragon among men. This was the thought that anyone who met Wang Chong would have. Appearance arises from the heart, and one's circumstances alter according to one's heart. After the baptism of the Southwestern War, Wang Chong's every move and action exuded an admirable aura. No sign of that good-for-nothing wastrel could be seen on him. Even Su Henian, who had arrived at the head of such a majestic procession, was dumbstruck. Wang Chong was much more handsome and elegant than he had imagined. "Humph, we are honored by young Master Wang's presence. What noble errand brings you here?" Su Henian quickly regained his senses and gave a cold snort. He stared unkindly at Wang Chong with clearly little intention of letting him in. Wang Chong faintly smiled, in no rush whatsoever. "So this is Su Qichin's big uncle, Su Henian." Wang Chong took measure of the middle-aged man who had appeared at the gate. Although he had interacted with Su Qichin many times and knew the people of the Su clan, he had not met a single one of them. This person is resolute and steadfast, but he's lacking a little daring. King Qi probably used him to alter the Su clan's attitude and have Su Qichin placed under house arrest. While Wang Chong's face showed no expression, his mind was working through countless thoughts. The moment he returned to the capital, he had found out that Su Qichin had been imprisoned in the Su residence by her big uncle and father. She was cut off from the outside world and was even banned from stepping outside her room. Although he wanted to help Su Qichin escape the constraints of her clan as quickly as possible, Wang Chong did not act rashly. Only after the reward ceremony did he finally pay a visit to the Su clan. Lord Su is too respectful. The Su clan is a renowned and noble clan, a master of the art of logistics. Wang Chong had long ago wished to visit, but only today found the time. Wang Chong clasped his hands and gave a deep bow. In addition, this one had long ago made an appointment with young Lady Su, but young Lady Su never arrived or gave any reply. This one was concerned and so came to pay a personal visit. "Ha! Was there something like that? Why didn't I know?" Su Henian coldly snorted, a harsh light flashing through his eyes. He was well aware of Wang Chong's intentions. There was no appointment. It just served as a convenient excuse. Su Qichin had been imprisoned in the residence for more than a month, with not even a fly being able to get in, much less any message. In addition, Qichin is currently ill and not receiving guests as she recovers. If young Master Wang wishes to see her, I advise young Master to return to your residence and wait for Qichin to get better. It will be completely fine for young Master to visit then. The moment Su Henian finished saying these words, he immediately adopted the attitude of someone declining visitors. He had opened the gate and met the visitor, leaving no grounds to criticize him. Wang Chong was young, and so if he dared to rush to someone else's residence and publicly denounce them, it would be like a novice trying to show off in front of the master. He was looking down too much on the Su clan. "Lord Su, my nephew has personally come to pay a visit. Is Lord Su intending to refuse him at the door, not even serving him a cup of tea?" A dignified voice suddenly spoke as the door of the carriage opened. A calm and composed figure emerged, his every movement imbued with the aura of a high official of the court. "Lord Wang." Su Henian paled at the sight of this figure. He had only seen Wang Chong, never expecting that Wang Chong's big uncle would accompany him, but he had been sitting inside the carriage this entire time. Wang Zhen had heard every word exchanged between the two. "Lord Su, since my nephew made an appointment with your niece, let the two of them resolve their difficulties. Lord Su wouldn't interfere and forcefully refuse for your niece, right?" Wang Zhen stared at Su Henian, his expression extremely unkind. Given a closer look, one could even see a hint of burning anger on his face. Wang Chong was currently the most talented and most capable individual of the Wang lineage, the one that everyone in the clan hoped would inherit the influence of the old master. Under his hands, the Wang clan could reach even greater heights. And in a single event, the sage emperor had conferred upon him the title of Marquis, a fief and even a courtesy name, amply displaying the son of heaven's favor to Wang Chong. In the capital, countless nobles and clans were viewing the Wang clan in a new light and clamoring to establish a relationship with it. In just the few days since Wang Chong had entered the city, The Wang clan had received countless marriage proposals, and some of them were from clans with even greater influence than the Su clan. These clans all wanted to marry their most outstanding daughters to Wang Chong, but Wang Chong had agreed to none of them, and it was no easy task to gain Wang Zhen's nod of approval. Given Wang Chong's current status, ordinary girls were not fit for him. But Wang Zhen hadn't expected that when Wang Chong paid a personal visit to the Su clan to see Su Qiqin, her big uncle Su Henian would reject them at the door. This greatly displeased Wang Zhen. This Lord Wang has misunderstood. Henian would never dare. Su Henian bowed, his forehead dripping sweat. The power of the Su clan primarily rested in the Bureau of Personnel and the Bureau of Revenue, in positions that wielded little real power. An important official like Wang Zhen, who wielded real authority, stood on a completely different level. Su Henian would dare to refuse Wang Chong at the gate, but he would never dare to do so to Wang. General Wang Chong was a junior, so it was fine to reject him. Wang Zhen, however, was a peer of the same generation, and if he were to refuse him, he would not merely be ending their relationship but committing a fatal offense. This was no wise course of action. After all, although the Wang clan was not as powerful as King Qi, it was still a faction that no ordinary clan could recklessly offend. But my lowly niece truly is recovering from an illness. There was no way of recovering a fired arrow. Su Henian had already declared that Su Qiqin was ill and had already offended the Wang clan. No matter what, he could only grit his teeth and continue on this course. But before Su Henian could go any further, he was interrupted by roars of laughter. Ha ha ha! Su Henian, you really hit it well. In the Southwestern War, your niece made such a massive contribution, yet you didn't even make a noise. You can't harm yourself too much for the public good. Not this much. Su Henian, I know that you're very humble and self-effacing, but you can't pull down your niece's contributions as well. The Southwestern War was a major affair and young Lady Su worked night and day. It's no wonder she collapsed from exhaustion. Since she's ill, it's even more right that we pay her a visit. The earth trembled as simple yet dignified bronze carriages rolled in from the other end of the street. Under Su Henian's flabbergasted and dumbfounded gaze, the carriage doors opened and imperial censors of the court began to walk out. Su Henian, your actions can be called knowing the situation but not reporting it. You'll have to make an account of yourself to the emperor above. Your Su clan made such enormous contributions. How could you hide and not report them? An imperial censor with his little finger missing from his left hand laughed as he walked forward. Su Henian could tell at a glance that this man was the severed finger imperial censor Xianxia. Although he was missing a finger, no one in the court would ever dare to look down on him. Back when the sage emperor wanted to personally lead an expedition, with the entire court failing to persuade him otherwise, Xianxia ended up cutting off his finger to display his will, further threatening to smash his head open on the floor of the palace. These efforts finally succeeded in changing the sage emperor's mind. Everyone felt deep veneration for Xianxia because of this incident and addressed him as the severed finger imperial censor. He was approved of by all and regarded as an upright and plain-spoken individual. Contribution. Su Henian felt dazzled at the sudden appearance of all these imperial censors. His mind a complete blank. Contribution. What contribution did the Su clan make? Why didn't he know? And why had imperial censors appeared here? Ha ha ha. Still pretending? Su Henian, this is a little overboard. If young Master Wang hadn't told us, just how long were you planning to hide your niece's contributions? Another imperial censor stepped forward, his head shaking as he chuckled. In his hand was a golden scroll. But this matter isn't up for you to decide. The imperial court is duty-bound to reward contributions and punish wrongs. The young lady of the Su clan made such great contributions that the imperial court can't not reward her. Su Henian, prepare to accept the reward. Su Henian was stunned. As he glanced at the smiling Wang Chong, he faintly understood, his face instantly turning green and red. He had believed all this time that Wang Chong was planning a public denouncement, but it turned out that Wang Chong had actually helped the Su clan obtain a reward. Su Henian had been trying all this time to distance the Su clan from the Wang clan and cozy up to King Qi, at the same time making this attitude known to the rest of the capital. But at this moment, in front of so many imperial censors from the court, not even King Qi at his most open-minded would believe the Su clan's stance. The younger generation will surpass the older. Su Henian closed his eyes and mentally gave a long sigh. Whether he wanted it or not, the Su clan and Wang clan would now appear to have an extremely close relationship in the eyes of the public. Not even Su Henian could change this, and the Su clan had no means of refusing this gift sent by Wang Chong. "My lords, please enter." Su Henian gave a long sigh and stood aside, allowing access into the Su clan residence. Deep within the Su clan residence, a fair-skinned and black-haired woman of peerless beauty sat in the center of a room in front of an exquisite dresser made from sandalwood. She faced a bronze mirror, her head slightly tilted as she combed her long hair. Spiraling columns of smoke rose from the incense burners, filling this serene and elegant boudoir. The woman's gaze was focused on the bronze mirror, but her heart was elsewhere. "I wonder how he's doing." Su Qiqin suddenly gave a long sigh, her eyes losing focus. It had been nearly 2 months since she had been locked in her room by her clan. At the start, she could still get some news on the outside world from her maid. But when her big uncle learned of this, he even had her maid moved away. Su Qiqin was clueless as to the current state of the outside world. Su Henian had not only placed her under house arrest, but also stationed 4 elite guards from the clan to stand guard at the corners of the room to prevent any escape. After several tries, Su Qiqin finally put aside the idea. "Qin, don't hold it against your big uncle. Your big uncle is also doing this for the sake of the Su clan. Just think about it. This is King Qi. His status in the court is like the noon sun. Our Su clan can't possibly make him an enemy." Su Qiqin's father Su Zhongyan was standing in a place nearby behind Su Qiqin, a bitter smile on his face. Su Qiqin's face was ice-cold, her only response to continue combing her long black hair that reached down to her waist. It was like her father had never even spoken those words. During her house arrest, Su Zhongyan had visited his daughter every day and given her a long lecture. In the past, Su Qiqin would take in some of these words, but this time, she refused to listen. "Qin, don't be stubborn." Seeing that Su Qiqin wasn't listening, Su Zhongyan grew even more concerned. "Just think about it. What's so good about that Wang Chong that you would butt heads with your big uncle and drag in the entire Su clan? Are such big risks worth it? In addition, you've been locked up in the residence for so long, but has that Wang Chong or the Wang clan done anything for you?" Su Qiqin finally interrupted her father. "There's no need for father to say any more. Your daughter knows what should be done, and I also believe that he will come to find me. Qin, you're too foolish. Although your father might be useless, if you stay around long enough in the capital, you see everything. That Wang Chong is only using you, and your father has also investigated the matter. He has many lady friends, and you are only one of them. Perhaps he's already forgotten you and won't come to get you at all." "Father!" Su Qiqin's face chilled as the comb in her hand suddenly dropped. It thudded against the sandalwood dresser, ushering in a long silence. Su Zhongyan took several steps back in fright. Although they were father and daughter, Su Zhongyan had always had a timid personality with no thoughts or ideas of his own, no position on which he could stand firm. It was only under the pressure of his older brother Su Henian that he came to Su Qiqin's room every day to constantly persuade her from day to night. Tap tap. While Su Qiqin's rage was growing, there was a knock on the door. "Who is it? Didn't I say that no one was to disturb me for anything?" Su Qiqin angrily said. "Young lady, it's young Master Wang." Before the maid could finish speaking, the door to Su Qiqin's room banged open. Air rushed in as a tall and handsome figure robed in red walked through the door. "Su Qiqin, I've come." As Wang Chong stepped over the threshold, he faintly smiled at Su Qiqin. Buzz! The room fell silent. Su Qiqin turned her head at that spirited figure standing at the door, both strange and familiar. Her expression was blank, her mind completely empty. Wang Chong," Su Qiqin stammered, staring in disbelief at Wang Chong. For a moment, she felt like it was all a dream. "Wang Chong." Suddenly, Su Qiqin lunged forward, embracing Wang Chong before he could react, tears streaming down her face. "It's you, it really is you." Wang Chong was astonished, clearly not expecting this. But then he heard that familiar voice weeping at his ear. "Bastard, you bastard. I thought you were dead. Haha. Didn't I already say that I would definitely come back? How could I die there?" Hearing Su Qichin's words, Wang Chong froze for a moment before chuckling and quietly beginning to soothe her. His hands also closed in a light embrace around Su Qichin. Su Qichin said nothing, only hugged Wang Chong and cried. For the Southwestern War, Wang Chong had only brought several thousand hired experts with him and rushed off to the battlefield. Everyone had believed that his death was certain, because no one believed that he could defeat the massive Mengshi Yusang army. Not even Su Qichin, although she had never said anything. She had been keenly aware that Wang Chong's death in the southwest was nearly certain. Many times, when the information flow from the southwest was cut off, Su Qichin believed that Wang Chong had already died. But she could not say anything about it, only do her utmost to help Wang Chong by sending a constant stream of provisions and weapons to the southwest. Su Qichin would have never believed that she would be so worried about a single person. When the entire empire was beset by storms, when everyone else was engulfed by panic and fear, he alone was persistent and resolved, charging into the battlefield without looking back. This was the first time Su Qichin truly felt like she knew Wang Chong, felt the fervent, brave heart, filled with boundless energy and duty, that lay beneath that young, 17-year-old body. After the Southwestern War, although her maid had told her that Wang Chong was still alive, Su Qichin had remained under constant house arrest with no access to news from the outside world. Without seeing it for herself, how could she believe her maid's words? But now the authentic Wang Chong had appeared before her. Feeling the warmth from his body, Su Qichin finally believed that Wang Chong was still alive. He truly had managed to survive the southwestern battlefield. In that serene and elegant room, the only sound was that of Su Qichin's sobbing and Wang Chong lightly patting her on her back to comfort her, a warm smile on his face. Su Zhongyan was stunned by this sight. At this moment, he chose to quietly stand to the side. At times, silence proved superior to words. While all of the Great Tang was immersed in celebration, the wheels of history continued to move. In the distant western regions, close to the Qixi Protectorate headquarters, the clanging of bells rang out through the air. In the desolate desert of Qixi, a white camel was slowly walking forward. 2 bells of silver and gold hung from its neck, the source of the clanging that echoed through the desert air. "Amen. How far are we from the Great Tang?" The voice of a woman, more pleasing to the ear than the song of an oriole, suddenly rose from the camel's back. "Princess, we should arrive in a little more than half a month." The maid called Aman leading the camel looked toward the white-veiled woman, lithe and charming, seated on the camel. She spoke in a soft voice, hoping to soothe the clearly displeased young woman. Other than the sound of the camel's bells, the only sounds on this journey to the east were the conversation between master and servant. But neither the white-veiled young woman nor the maid leading the camel spoke in the language of the Central Plains. In truth, if one carefully examined this pair, they would realize that they exuded a thick foreign air, whether it was in their deep and enchanting brown eyes, their naturally curling hair, the lines on their faces, or their demeanor. In all these aspects, they were completely different from the people of the Great Tang. "Princess, don't be sad. Although the Great Tang of the Central Plains is far from our homeland, there are many of our people living here. In addition, I hear that the Great Tang is an extremely prosperous and cultured land. With this, at least, we won't encounter any problems living here. Once we accomplish our mission, the Caliph will allow us to return," Aman soothed. The white-veiled woman continued to look resentfully forward. With each step the camel took only adding to her grief. "Aman, tell me, is that Tang boy called Wang Chong truly this important?" Alia faintly said. "Princess, you know the importance the Caliph places on the Wuxia steel weapons. We made our names through our skill in forging. But even though we've had the Hyderabad or for so long and His Majesty has gathered so many formidable craftsmen, none of them were able to produce that miraculous Wuxia steel. Much of the Hyderabad ore has been wasted, and not even the weapons produced by Master Usama can match the wood steel produced by that great Tang youth. Moreover, they're black and ugly, lacking any of the beauty of those weapons. Our Abbasid Caliphate has always been known for the quality of the weapons it forges, but none of these masters can produce a single ingot of wood steel. This is completely unacceptable to His Majesty. So Princess can imagine His Majesty's fury. A man persuasively argued. Alia gave a long sigh and said no more. She was a princess of the Abbasid Caliphate. Logically speaking, she should have been living a life of luxury, attended upon by countless servants and spending her days in a sumptuous palace. She should not have been traveling vast distances to hang around in a foreign country. But Alia was deeply aware that the princesses of the Abbasid Caliphate were different from the princesses of other empires. Although her father was the esteemed caliph of the Abbasid Caliphate, essentially the emperor of Arabia, he had more than 100 princesses, Alia being only one of them. With so many sisters, one could easily imagine how little regard Alia received. Her fate was already decided. I wonder what sort of person that Tang youth called Wang Chong is? The Abbasid princess called Alia continued to look forward, falling into a stupor. Now that everything was decided and unalterable, she suddenly began to wonder just what that foreign boy who had altered her fate was actually like. Clink-clang. The camel's bells continued to ring as the white camel slowly proceeded forward. Master and servant proceeded along the official road, a unit of Arabian cavalry following behind them. In the residence of the Wang clan, in a room on the northwest corner, all was quiet. A young man of 16 or 17 years was currently sitting cross-legged on a bed, his eyes closed in cultivation. Although this man was externally young and handsome, the composure he exuded was abnormally steady, tempered, and firm, like that of a mountain. White streams of smoke began to emerge from the top of the youth's head, gradually diffusing through the room. After returning from the reward ceremony, Wang Chong had remained at home, quietly cultivating. Now that he thought about it, it had been a very long time since he had quietly cultivated like this. As time slowly passed, streams of spiritual energy flowed in from the surroundings and entered his body, gradually strengthening his cultivation. After some time, a change suddenly occurred. Buzz! A stream of faint red energy had mixed in with the white streams of smoke emerging from Wang Chong's head. The atmosphere in the room transformed. Swoosh! Veins as thick as fingers seemed to take on a life of their own as they began to bulge out, creeping out from beneath his collar. These bulging veins were like tree roots, rapidly spreading from his collar to his neck and on to the rest of his face. Crimson drops of sweat began to seep out from his face. Wang Chong's face began to contort and writhe, forming a most gruesome expression. Ah! Wang Chong's eyes snapped open as he let out a howl of pain. His body tilted forward, a hand stretching out to prop him up on the bed, while his chest heaved for air. In the blink of an eye, Wang Chong's robe became soaked, a few specks of blood faintly visible. Wang Chong's body was trembling, but he said not a single word, gave no more howls of pain. The room was quiet as though sweat drops tinged with blood merged together on the bed, slowly forming a puddle. After some time, once the pain in his body had somewhat faded, Wang Chong finally clambered off the bed and took off his blood-stained robe. He then took a towel from the corner of the room, dipped it in a prepared metal basin of water, and slowly began to clean his body. "Let me do it." A voice came from behind him, cold, yet with an alluring cadence. Wang Chong shook his head, but before he could reject the notion, the slender hand of a woman reached out, took the towel from his hands, and began to wipe down his body. Wang Chong froze for a few moments, but he decided to say nothing and allow the woman in the room to continue to wipe his body. The towel dipped into the basin of water time and time again, quickly dyeing the clear water a bloody red. "What's going on here? I remember that when you went to the southwest you didn't have this sort of illness. In just 7 days this has happened 3 times. What in the world happened?" asked Mayasame Ayaka in concern as she wiped down Wang Chong's body. She was dressed in her dark spying outfit. While Wang Chong was in the southwest, Mayasame Ayaka had stood guard at home. Right now, she had become the shadow of the Wang clan and few secrets in the clan could be hidden from her. Haha, you don't need to know. In addition, you wouldn't be able to help me, Wang Chong indifferently said. You're not willing to say? Mayasame Ayaka's hand paused for a moment before continuing to wipe him down. You're worried that the madam will be worried? It's fine if you know, but you can't let mother know, Wang Chong indifferently said. At the most intense moment of fighting in the Southwestern War, Wang Chong had single-handedly killed more than 10,000 people, holding the defensive line. All of this had not come for free, but Wang Chong told no one about the price he had paid. Tap, tap, tap. While he was thinking, he suddenly heard knocking at the door. Young master, the carriage is ready. We are ready to leave for the Tai-Bai Immortals Pavilion at any time. I know. Wang Chong nodded. Take care of the towels, clothes, and basin. Don't let anyone else know, especially mother. Yes. With these words, Wang Chong opened the door to his room and walked out. Boarding the waiting carriage, he set off for the Tai-Bai Immortals Pavilion. The Tai-Bai Immortals Pavilion was a restaurant that Wang Chong had opened. Built in an impressive style, it had gathered many master chefs under its roof. Through the reputation of Wang Chong's 3 songs of peace, the Tai-Bai Immortals Pavilion had become one of the rising stars in the capital. Coupled with Wang Chong's glorious achievements in the Southwest, the Tai-Bai Immortals Pavilion was now one of the most popular places in the capital. If you don't drink the wine of Tai-Bai, you don't deserve to call yourself a citizen of the capital, was a phrase that had widely spread through the capital. As a result, Wang Chong's Tai-Bai Immortals Pavilion had become an excellent place for scholars and powerful merchants to hold meetings and banquets. Its renown in the capital had even surpassed the Yao clan's vast crane pavilion. Each month, it brought in a princely sum for Wang Chong and the Wang clan, a wealth that Wang Chong had not expected when he first opened the restaurant. However, a restaurant that had been opened for Wang Chong's convenience was naturally different from other restaurants. The greatest difference was that the entire top floor of the Tai-Bai Immortals Pavilion was reserved for Wang Chong's exclusive use. Moreover, if Wang Chong required it, the entirety of the Tai-Bai Immortals Pavilion could shut its doors and see off its guests so that Wang Chong alone could use it. Yet this condition not only did not attract any displeasure from the patrons, it made crowds rush to gather around the restaurant. After all, Wang Chong himself was the greatest attraction of the Tai-Bai Immortals Pavilion. Everyone wanted to get a look at the hero of the Southwest, the youngest marquis in the history of the Great Tang Empire. Rumble. Wang Chong's carriage had just gotten close to Tai-Bai Immortals Pavilion when it immediately caused a stir within the gathered crowd. Look over there. The young marquis. Wah! It really is the carriage of the young marquis. Out of the way, out of the way. Let me see. I've been waiting here for 7 days already. I hear that the young marquis is only 17 and still doesn't have a marriage partner. If he sees me, I might be able to marry into the Wang clan and become partners in love with him. Get out of here. You're more than 20 years old, even older than the young marquis, you auntie. Wang Chong. Look at me. Look at me. Crowds thronged around the gate to the Tai-Bai Immortals Pavilion, men, women, the old, and the young tightly surrounding Wang Chong's carriage. And young, unmarried women were the largest demographic in this crowd. Wang Chong was only 17, born of a clan of ministers and generals, a hero of the empire, and a rising star in the world. Although he was still no general, many people in the capital were already hailing him as the empire's 8th great general. An unmarried young man like this had become the dream lover for countless young girls of the capital. Wherever Wang Chong went, a throng of girls would appear. This was one of the important reasons for Wang Chong's prolonged cultivation in his residence. Young master, we can't move, the driver of the carriage said. The girls on the street were too frenzied, with teenaged girls seizing the reins of the carriage and blocking its path. I know. Wang Chong slightly furrowed his brow. Fame had its own problems, and he really had no way to deal with this problem. This is all I can do. Wang Chong pushed open the carriage window. Clap. The window opened and his figure shot out. His right hand lightly pressed against the roof of the carriage and pushed. As the crowd gasped, he took off like a hawk, leaping straight to the top floor of the Tai-Bai Immortals Pavilion. He, the grand young marquis of the Great Tang, the son of Heaven's disciple, is actually forced to exit a carriage through the window. If this is spread around, it would make people laugh their heads off. Giggling came from nearby. Zhao Yadong with her characteristic red-tasseled spear was leaning on a cinnabar pillar, her face beaming. Humph, who told him to be so welcoming to girls? Serves him right. A voice dripping with envy said. Huang Qin'er, dressed in yellow, her trademark silver sword hanging from the sheath on her back, glared venomously at Wang Chong. Wang Chong was deeply embarrassed. In this period of time, these girls had made him the butt of quite a few of their jokes. Yadong, Qin'er, please stop making jokes about me, Wang Chong said with a bitter smile. That's enough. Seeing the young marquis who can command troops on the front lines like a god appear so beaten was worth the trip. Sisters, let's not make things any more difficult for him. Wang Chong, hurry. Everyone is already here. We're just waiting on you now. Nearby, a large, round, sandalwood table had been placed at the top of the Tai-Bai Immortals Pavilion. Familiar figures were seated all around the table. Guofeng, Chai Zi, Zhuang Zhengping, Qi Weisi, Zhao Jingdian, Su Gan, Fang Xianling, and also Marchioness Yi Bai Siling and Su Qiqin. Bai Siling was seated on a spacious armchair and looking right at Wang Chong with a smirk on her face. At this moment, everyone else at the table had their heads turned the other way, perhaps pretending to be drinking tea or pondering some deep matter. Each of them had all wisely pretended to see nothing. Bai Siling, Zhao Yadong, Huang Qin'er, and Su Qiqin, these four girls all had a rather ambiguous relationship with Wang Chong. Only a fool would attempt to get between them at a time like this. These four were renowned beauties of the capital, and when girls of such talent got angry, not just anyone could bear their rage. In fact, there were times when everyone at the table sympathized with the four. Ladies and gentlemen, I've kept you waiting. After playing out a comedy for the assembled party, Wang Chong only needed to smile and shake his sleeves a little to regain his composure. Striding forward, he seated himself between Guofeng and Chai Zi. Upon seeing the seat Wang Chong had chosen, the eyes of the girls flashed and the mood instantly softened. Formidable! Guofeng and Chai Zi gave Wang Chong looks of praise. Brother Wang, why did you call us all here today? In the end, it was still Fang Xianling who broke the silence. It was only this morning that they had all received Wang Chong's invitation and rushed to the Tai-Bai Immortals Pavilion. Although they had originally thought that this was just an ordinary gathering, once they saw that Guofeng and Chai Zi were present, they immediately knew that this gathering was not as simple as they imagined. Wang Chong had always done things with an objective in mind, but with the war over, no one knew what Wang Chong was planning on doing next.